like I said,
They don't deliver in our cul-de-sac. Okay, page 14 and 44. Another question on the South Metro Water Supply Authority. Those are quarterly dues paid to participate in WISE, is that correct?
That's correct.
And then, I guess my question
Well, to
is...
participate in South Metro, because nobody's technically participating.
But to participate in WISE through South Metro, because those aren't the South Metro dues, are they?
Yes.
Because you pay, that, I thought it's...
We pay two different things to South Metro. One
Right.
dues,
One are the annual
and
dues.
the other one is participation
In a project.
in the, which is the analysis leading up to
Okay,
potentially a
so
project.
this doesn't mean, because I know at the last meeting, we were told that we have not committed to WISE yet.
We have not committed.
This is only a commitment to the analysis of
That is
WISE.
correct.
Is that correct? Okay. Page...
It's going to get worse because apparently we're out of acronyms other than WISE, WISER, and WISEST. I kid you not.
Well, I could probably Page 29 and 44, Insight Public Sector, Computer Software and Licensing, IT licensing. What is that? For kind of a program. Okay, can you get back to me? Sure. Just curious. Page 31 of 44, Landscape Pros, 8,333. Is that just year-end cleanup?
No, that's part of their contract. They have a contract with district.
Is it a 7-month or is it an annual?
It is an annual.
So we pay them $8,000 a year, I mean a month,
It's
for 12 months?
not for 12 months.
I think it's 8 months.
8 months? And that's for all of the facilities?
Yes.
And my last question, page 44 of 44, State has water resource, the enlargement, what do they do?
They currently are working on design of wetlands number 4, which is a mitigation wetlands that we will be actually planting next spring.
Where is that surrounding the reservoir?
It's immediately below the reservoir, so it picks up water that we can actually release to it, so we'll have to feed that wetland. It's a very natural sort of thing. And it sits between the base of the dam and the edge of, the north edge of Esrae.
Is that road open?
Was not as of yesterday. We're hearing you can open anytime.
On or about Thanksgiving.
All or
Next week.
Thanksgiving?
On or about Thanksgiving.
Oh, thank you.
Any other questions for staff on the accounts payable? All right then, need a motion?
Offer a motion to accept the payables for the month of October 2011.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, moving down, the next item is Director Beard's involvement with other water agencies. Jeff,
Well,
did you or your wife or?
Would you like me to start?
sure.
Okay, I'd be happy to. I have a memo actually that I prepared October 14th, 2010 regarding this. Because Shep Root has sent me an email dated Monday, October 11th, 2010, regarding transparency. And I'm going to read that just to start out, so we have a history here. Darcy, I understand you're still unwilling to voluntarily disclose your professional relationships with other water and our sanitation districts. You have repeatedly mentioned your professional relationships at Parker Water and Sanitation District board meetings and on your web campaign site. You have demonstrated a clear and specific unwillingness to disclose conflicts of interest. You have been asked in public meetings, you have been asked by district council, you have so far refused to name your potential conflicts. I think that this is a specific refusal to be transparent. If you do not elect to volunteer the appropriate information, I will need to represent the interests of the taxpayers by challenging this issue immediately in a public meeting. If I have misunderstood your position, please call or message me. Shep.
Obviously, I've been really patient.
Well, let me explain to you a little bit. Apparently, you don't really understand the conflict of interest rules in the state of Colorado. Okay, and I have a memo here, and actually had someone pass it out to the audience for me so that they can follow along. So I'm just going to read this.
What I was asking for, Darcy, is transparency.
Jeff, let me go into this. Okay, you asked me for this. I'm going to give it to you. Then we can talk about transparency when I'm finished. We can continue, okay? Okay, on October 11th, I received the attached email. The email suggests my reluctance to disclose my client list to the Parker Water Sanitation District Board, staff, and public, and equates to my unwillingness to disclose conflicts of interest resulting in a lack of transparency. I want to begin my response by recapping the Colorado Revised Statutes regarding disclosures and conflicts of interest of board members, district managers, and executive officers. And Jeff, interrupt me if I'm incorrect on this. Section 32-1-902B of the Colorado Revised Statute states any director shall disqualify himself or herself from voting on any issue in which the director has a conflict of interest unless the director has disclosed such conflict of interest in compliance with Section 18-8-308 of the Colorado Revised Statute. That section, Section 18-8-308, states, number one, a public service commits failing to disclose a conflict of interest if he exercises any substantial function in connection with a government contract, purchase, payment, or other pecuniary transaction without having given 72 hours actual advance written notice to the Secretary of State and to the governing body of the government which employs the public servant of the existence of a known potential conflicting interest in the public service in the transaction with reference to which he is about to act in his official capacity. Number two states a potential conflicting interest exists when the public servant is a director, president, general manager, or similar executive officer, or owns or controls directly or indirectly a substantial interest in any non-governmental entity participating in the transaction. State number three states failing to disclose a conflict of interest is a Class 2 misdemeanor. So the above referenced statute clearly states that any conflict of interest must be disclosed by a public servant, i.e. a director, in writing to the Secretary of State and the governing body, in this case Parker Water, 72 hours prior to voting on an issue in which a potential conflict of interest exists. In absence of such a disclosure, the public servant or the director has the option of disqualifying himself from voting on any issue where a conflict of interest exists. On page 2, the use of the latter option can be found in the March 12th, and I'll encourage any of you to look this up, 2009 minutes, when then Director Jason Mumm abstained, who is now with Stepwise, abstained from voting on a contract to hire Red Oak Consulting for the 2009 rate study. Although no disclosure was made by Mr. Mumm, currently the owner of Stepwise Utilities, there was speculation among the public in attendance at the meeting that Mr. Mumm had been a principal in a company who had merged with Red Oak Consulting. In fact, Jason told me he had been a principal. Accordingly, Mr. Mumm acted appropriately by abstaining from the vote. However, Mr. Mumm was never asked by Parker Water, board, or staff to publicly disclose his potential conflict of interest or client list. One may wonder why I am reluctant to disclose my client list to remove any suspicion of a potential conflict of interest. First, I am familiar with the law regarding conflicts of interest and accordingly am unwilling to jeopardize my CPA license or integrity by violating the law. I certainly wouldn't violate the law to benefit anyone. Not another client, not myself. Per the Colorado State Board of Accountancy rules of conduct, I am required to keep service and the public trust above personal gain and advantage. It is the quality from which the public trust derives and the benchmark against which a certificate holder must ultimately test all decisions. Accordingly, if a potential conflict of interest were to arise, I would promptly disclose the conflict and or abstain from discussion and voting on any such interest. Therefore, disclosure of my client list is unnecessary. Secondly, and probably more important, my client list, which includes both special districts and private entities, is private information. Many professionals, such as engineers, lawyers, bankers, and others serve as elected officials and are never required to disclose their client list as a prerequisite of serving. Finally, during the recall election in 2008, a very qualified individual who worked for a neighboring utility, Arapahoe County Water and Wastewater Authority, chose to run for the office of Parker Water and Sanitation District Director. This individual was very knowledgeable. He would have been a huge asset to this board. He would have brought questions forward that none of you, well, most of you are incapable of even knowing.
Darcy?
Mary, let me finish.
No, hold
You
on.
asked, no, let me finish.
You've got
He
5.
was very, no, I don't have 5. I'm
Yes.
director and I can speak for as long as
But
I
you
choose.
don't
You
impugn
opened
the
the can of
honor.
worms. No,
But Darcy, you don't attack the people. You can
And
make your
you
case.
have allowed
but
this
attack.
to me to be attacked. This is
I'm
nothing
not,
but a
nobody's
witch hunt.
attacking you.
This person who works for Aqua, still continues, had cleared his decision to run for the board with his employer prior to submitting his affidavit to run. Suddenly, after the ballots were printed, he was asked by his employer to withdraw from the election due to a potential conflict of interest. One can only speculate where and why this pressure to withdraw from the race arose. There may have been discussions and decisions which he would have been required to abstain. However, none of the discussions or decisions on Parker Water Board since I was elected in May of 2010 would have required his abstention. Consequently, I do not trust the origins for the demand that this individual withdraw from the election or the motives behind the request for my client list. Is this an attempt to cause my removal from the board due to animosity directed at me, due to the recall election perhaps? Let me assure everyone I will continue to serve the customers of the Parker Water and Sanitation District to the best of my ability, and should a potential conflict of interest ever present itself, I will act in accordance with Colorado law and appropriately disclose the potential conflict of interest and or abstain from discussion and voting on the potential conflict. Now, you asked if this would be more transparent for me to disclose my client list. So Shep, where would it stop? First of all,
This trip behind the barn and around the countryside still sounds like you don't want to be transparent. You're telling a story about some supposed desire to have you removed from office. You're talking about Jason Hum. You're talking about, you've got a great story here. All I asked for was transparency. Now, 4 of the districts you work for are, public record. They're available on the internet. So it's not like a lot is secret. Your campaign site still does go on about transparency. And in the first 2 paragraphs of your bio on the Parker Water website, you mentioned the 7 districts you represent, once in the first paragraph and again in the second paragraph. It's an issue that you push often and accept to give us some transparency about who these folks are that you talk about so
what
often.
difference would it make who they are?
Well, I don't know.
Well,
Because
and the point is, of
so
my
you're just not
discussion
willing
with you,
to be transparent,
You're
are
right,
you,
I'm-
Darcy?
you know what? I'm not willing to disclose my client list, and I'll tell you why, Shep. Because where would it stop? I have tax clients. Maybe there are millions of tax clients. Maybe. I have tax clients. I have small business clients.
Darcy, could I ask you not to stand right in front of James while you make your point?
I have many clients. So where does it stop? You need to know all of my friends as well to determine whether or not I'm being transparent. Sure. But what about Mary? Mary, who do you give loans to? Maybe you're not being transparent. Maybe you give loans to Jim Marshall. Maybe.
Maybe.
Has anyone asked you to disclose your client list?
I disclosed up front that I worked for a bank. The
And I
first time
disclosed that I
read-
work for special districts and I'm self-employed. I think it's inappropriate.
I guess the issue for some of the board, Darcy, is that you're always harping on transparency, but yet you don't want to be transparent with
I am transparent. You know that I work with districts.
And
And I know that you're a
Sure
lady.
do.
Yeah.
And I know that Randy's an engineer. I don't ask whose clients he has. Okay? But I will say this. Something else I ran across, which is probably way more interesting than my client list, is this. And I had done this research as well a year ago, and found it when I was pulling out my packets of this memo that I've been carrying around for a year, waiting for you to bring this up. And that is the conflict of interest compendium of Colorado statutes. And there's Colorado Revised Statute 24-18-101, which defines standards of conduct, code of ethics, prescribed acts related to contracts and claims. This says it covers public officials, local government officials, which is us, and goes on to say that public employees have a fiduciary duty to act for the benefit of the people of the state and has individual liability for breach of fiduciary duty. And it goes on to say that acts that constitute a breach of duty include acceptance of gifts or substantial economic benefit, which would tend to influence one to depart from faithful and impartial discharge of one's duties. And I went to the website. I went to the Secretary of State's website, and I found that there was approximately $12,000 contributed by developers in this community, two developers in this community, to Mary Spencer, Shep Root, and Mike Casey, between 2008 and 2010.
I don't think that's
Interestingly,
correct. Darcy,
yes, it is
that
correct.
is public record, and
Yes, it
anybody can look, and you're not going to see a developer name in my contributions. Maybe for somebody else, but not for me.
I would be happy to email you everything that I printed out.
Please feel free.
Yes, I will. Because it's there. $12,000 between the three of you for an office that pays maximum $1,600 per year. That to me is perhaps could be defined as substantial economic benefit.
All right, thanks, Darcy. So
Especially-
I'd like to point,
No,
excuse me, I get to say something to Darcy. Yes, no, I get to say something
In
to Darcy.
addition, everyone
Darcy,
should be
that's
aware-
that's enough.
Everybody, take a minute.
You're interrupting me, Shep. Mary, you always yell at me when I
Any one of
interrupt,
you
so-
who would like to look at Secretary of State's website, Tracer, it's got a list of all of the campaign contributions. You can look it up under my name and see for yourself. It's easy.
I'll be
It's
happy
public
to
record.
forward anyone the information because I have it all printed out. It's sitting on my desk. I can scan it and send it to you. If you want it, just let me know. My name and number are on the paperwork that I passed out. The tax fees, by the way, that only benefit really the developers were decreased from 2007 to 2010
Recommended
by
by the rate study.
18%, $5,385. Now, you know that Mr. Festel is developing that corner lot, and that's going to be a very, very large tap. And so there was his $12,000, or the total was more like $15,000 when you include Jason Mom, Sean Morris, and your running mate. That $15,000 is a drop in the bucket compared to the cost of, or the savings on that tax fee. So yes,
If
you have
you
any questions on my
If you want to talk
transparency?
about the transparency, fine, but don't sit here and accuse your fellow board members. We're not accusing you of doing anything.
You're not
illegal.
accusing me, you're
Yes.
just demanding you're accusing me of not being transparent. I'm simply laying